Veronica Pepper, your achievements are absolutely astounding, and it's hard to think that you've done so much in one lifetime, but you have. Can you tell me how many dances you've danced in, how many ballets you've choreographed?
No, I didn't dance all that long, and when I discovered that I could choreograph, I very quickly sort of switched sides and sort of behind the camera instead of in front, if you know what I mean. But I enjoyed every second of my whole professional career, I must say. I've been very fortunate.
You're a true banana girl. You're from Natal.
I am, yes. I'm born in Port Shepstone, grew up in Durban, started ballet at the age of 5. When I was, the doctor said to my mother, she's got flat feet, she should take up ballet. So my mother took me to put on the little pink shoes, put on those pink shoes, and that was it. I knew exactly what I was going to do for the rest of my life. It was dance.
I've actually got a question here. Who were your early influences? It was the doctor.
Absolutely.
Who were your early influences?
Oh, I don't know so much. I was riveted by pictures of Margot Fonteyn dancing the Sugar Plum Fairy. That's one of my earliest memories. And then any music that came on and any poor relative that came on, I insisted they sit down there and I'd dance for them. And they weren't allowed to move until I'd performed for them. So I was a monster as a child, absolute monster.
And was Natal a bit of a backwater? Will I be shot for saying that?
I beg your pardon. No.
I'll be shot for saying that.
Oh, no, but I suppose it was in some sense when you look back on it now, but it was terribly colonial at the time, you know, and we loved our English tea and all that kind of thing. My dear beloved granny was a stickler for all the sort of things that you had to do. And my poor mother had to sort of toe the line. And when Granny died, then we packed up everything and moved to Cape Town when I was about 9, I think, or 10. And I've more or less been here ever since in Cape Town.
Which is why you went to Cape Town University to study?
First of all, I started off with Cape Town School. Would rush to the ballet school as soon as we arrived, just about. I sort of pushed my mother to take me there. Once we were there, you know, it developed. I stayed there through my school years, and then I joined the UCT Ballet School at the time, and which sort of metamorphosed into the Cape Town Ballet Company, which eventually it turned into Cape Town City Ballet.
And Dulcie Howes was
very much
influential in your life?
Absolutely. Dulcie Howes, Pamela Crimes, Mary Suckling, David Poole, who was a huge influence on my whole career. And I was really lucky to have all those people sort of bashing me around at the time.
Just tell me something about Dulcie Howes. Was she a...
Dulcie
She's a very powerful lady.
Oh, extremely, but Dulcie's a whole story on her own. We used to do these tours. And the one I was particularly involved with was the Nutcracker. I think it was 1960. And David Poole decided to do a production of the Nutcracker, which I thought was totally, totally magical. At that year, in 1960, I joined the school, the UCT Ballet University course. That was a 3-year course at the time, but there was the UCT Ballet Company. And during the holiday periods, and once a year, at the end of the year, the UCT Ballet Company used to put on one production. And the whole of the year was spent rehearsing that production. Every evening, every Saturday afternoon, every Sunday, and I couldn't wait to be there all the time. I was watching it, you know, I was really a monster child, obsessed, and told my mother, no, I have to go and watch rehearsal and or be in it. And then we did Nutcracker that first year. They'd done other productions before. And then we toured, and under Dulcie Howes, we used to tour endlessly. Every tiny little town in South Africa, I have been there with the Nutcracker.
And what did you dance on? Just on a school stage?
There's always a town hall, and we used to dance in the town hall. We used to help set up the stage. We used to help iron the costumes and mend them, And then we used to put them on, we'd go on at the stage and we'd pack them away at the end of the performance. But at the end of every performance, Darcy Howes used to come on stage to take a call. And we used to go on these 9-week tours of one-night stands, and every single night she had a different dress on. So where she put them, I don't know. She had suitcases and suitcases, but she was wonderful. She was such a lady. She was more magisterial than the Queen.
And tell me something about David Poole, because he was a legendary figure at the time.
He was a wonderfully theatrical person. He could instill theatre into you, you know, he wasn't such a fantastic dancer, but he had an incredible personality on stage. He was one of those people that when you got on the stage, you couldn't take your eyes off him. And he was a superb actor. For a while, he danced with the Sadler's Wells Theatre in London, and he did quite a few very good, wonderful roles there and got a great name for himself. And he was instigated in developing choreographers. And I don't know if you know who Kenneth Macmillan is. And he started Kenneth Macmillan's career off, and he eventually became the resident choreographer of the Royal Ballet after Frederick Ashton. David Poole also knew Frederick Ashton, all those historical people. So, you know, I'm very fortunate I've got that sort of legacy behind me. But David was horrific. But you learned so much.
Throwing temper tantrums or...
Unbelievable. And Darcy was the same. I mean, what they put us through was absolute torture, but we loved it. And then they really instilled professionalism, I should say, into the company. You can't shout at people anymore, not like they used to shout at us. But we learnt so much. And I think, you know, unfortunately, I think a lot of that is lacking these days in the very young. But then I'm terribly old, so I can say that.
Veronica, you've lived through an extraordinary era.
Yes, I did, didn't I?
I mean, David Poole is a legend to all of us. We know about him. And to hear about his personality directly from you is fantastic.
Oof. I don't think the youngsters of today could have survived 5 minutes with David. And he wasn't afraid to tell you exactly how bad you were.
What was his official training? Did he join the school, or did Dulcie Howes just pull him out of his background?
Well, in long ago, you know, Dulcie Howes started the UCT school, and they used to have a hangar, an old aircraft hangar that was built, or at least transported from out there in the flats up onto the hill. You know, the college, the music college wasn't there at all. That road that goes up there, Woolsack Drive, wasn't there. It was all lovely garden, and there was a hangar there, and Dulcie used to hold her dancing classes there. And David used to walk up to university. He was doing his BA. He was a very intelligent guy, and he used to walk past the thing, and Dulcie literally put her hand in, he'd grab men that would pass to come in and help his partner, a girl, and that's how he started. And then he became fascinated by it, and eventually started a reasonably good dancer, and then he went overseas and became better, and you know, so he grew out of that. I've got such wonderful stories about Dulcie, and about her father that died, and then her mother. Her father died long, but her mother remarried, and the second husband, when he died, you know, and they used to cover the coffins with a great big velvet, beautiful. So she grabbed that for her ballet company. And then Giselle, you know, Albrecht comes on with a cloak, beautiful cloak. What he used, what do they call it? Funeral thing. For years we used that to come on into the ghostly and the morbid bit of history there.
You were a principal dancer for almost all the performing arts councils. How did that happen?
Almost all. I scandalized the ballet world. I started off in UCT Ballet Company, which turned into the Cape Ballet Company. Dulcie Howes invited Frank Staff from Grahamstown to come and produce Peter and the Wolf for us. And oddly enough, I was looking through papers, old papers, and I found this interview with Dulcie saying she has invited Frank Staff to come down and produce Peter and the Wolf for the company. And he cast me as Peter, Frank. And then he produced another ballet called Transfigured Night. And he cast me in as the younger sister. And then I went and married him. And I left the Cape Town pab that was then. He wrote quite a few ballets on me, and I think that's where I sort of went to choreographer's school. And then we moved to Johannesburg. We also did a season or two in NAPAC and Durban. And then we also went to the Orange Free State and performed and ran a company there. So, yes, I've been around quite a bit.
So, are ballet dancers not meant to marry? Is that the scandal?
Well, the scandal was that he married 3 times before. I was the 4th. I was number 4. And each of the wives had a son, of which I also had a son. So, and then he was a naughty boy, Frank. But a very good-looking naughty boy. And he did quite a lot of work in the theatre industry for Brian Brook. And he did the musical Irma la Douce. Did you ever? And
yes,
one of his wives was Heather Lloyd-Jones, and she was Irma in Irma la Douce. It was a wonderful musical, absolutely stunning. I wish they'd bring it back. I loved it. But he produced and choreographed it. Frank, for me, was one of the best choreographers ever. He should have stayed in London.
And your best teacher? Because soon after that, you became a choreographer yourself.
Yes, well, when Frank died, I then moved back to Cape Town. I was in Johannesburg, Free State at the time. I moved back to Cape Town, and then a friend of mine in the company, John Simons, said to me, I was always saying, I want to write, I want to use this particular music because it was so glorious. It's the Ernest Bloch Shalomo. Do you know it at all? Beautiful cello piece. And I was saying, because Frank had always said, one day I want to write a ballet to this music, and this is what I will do. I will do a ballet based on John the Baptist. I will start the ballet with his head on a plate and his eyes flickering. And the ballet is about the thoughts that go through his mind in those last moments when his eyes are flickering. So John Simons persuaded me to then do that ballet for a charity occasion. It was called Teach. It was run by the Argus. So we put on this charity performance, and for that I wrote John the Baptist, using John Simons as John the Baptist. And it worked. It worked extraordinarily well. Well, David Poole thought so at the time. So he was then director of KPAB, and then he asked me to do another ballet called and I wrote it about an elephant, Heri Hiller, and that also worked. And from there, I did Romeo and Juliet, and so that's how my choreographic career developed.
I want to just go back to Frank Staff. Was he a dance partner?
He was a dancer.
He was a dancer, but was he your partner?
He didn't really dance with me that much. He choreographed a lot on me. When he was dancing, he started ballet under Helen Webb here in Cape Town. He went overseas and joined the Ballet Rambert school and was then considered the white hope of British ballet. He was an extremely good dancer. And then the war happened, and he joined, all the young men of that period joined the army, and he became quite far up, I believe, captain in a tank squadron, what do they call it? And the tank ran over his foot, ruining his ballet career completely. But he could still dance after that, but not as well as before. So quite tragic at the time. But then he turned to choreography more and more and more, which he was extremely talented of. And Marie Rambert really encouraged him a lot to choreograph. And that's how he became for me, the best choreographer ever.
And Veronica, talk to me about partners. Did you ever have one specific dance partner?
No.
Not?
I danced with David Poole quite a lot.
Oh.
Somebody called Victor Hughes that then went off and is now working in Germany. John Simons was my partner a lot. I didn't dance with all the younger ones that people know, Edward Hreiling, and they came well after me. You know, I'm terribly old. They're much younger than I am.
What makes a good dance partner?
That's a difficult one because you've got to be incredibly strong, and you have to have, for me, you've got to be incredibly musical. So both dancers are very musical, and they can, you know, meld together. And they also have the feel of where the girl's weight is, and it takes quite a few years to learn to partner properly, which is sadly a skill that seems not so prevalent these days. I don't think, anyway.
You have worked extensively with Peter Cazalet.
Mm.
When was the first partnership when you worked with him? Because you've done many. I mean, you've done...
Yes, the first ballet that he designed for me was Romeo and Juliet. And he did the most incredible job, really wonderful. But on the other hand, that particular Romeo and Juliet production that I did, I based it on Frank Staff's production. When Frank wrote it on the UCT, it was a UCT ballet company then, not KPAB with professional dancers. Very few of the dancers could actually dance. So he was brilliant in that he could move people around and make them look like they were fantastic, and they weren't. So the battle scenes, you know, were busy and wonderfully sort of chaotic. And I borrowed a lot, and I also borrowed the form that he did of the ballet Romeo and Juliet, because, you know, there have been so many different productions of Romeo and Juliet. Every choreographer wants to write Romeo and Juliet. But let me tell you something funny. Nanette de Valois, the lady who started the Royal Ballet Company, and before that the Sadler's Wells School, which then got the Royal Charter. And Sadler's Wells Company, Sadler's Wells School, she started it all. She started British Ballet, Nanette de Valois. But she was a great friend of David Poole, who invited her out to Cape Town. And I just started writing ballets, and I proudly said to her, because David introduced me to her and said, she's our resident choreographer, always going to be at the time. And then I proudly said, I've done Romeo and Juliet. And she said, oh, I don't count that. You've got the music, you've got the story, you can't miss. And to a certain extent, it's true, because I've seen some ghastly productions of Romeo and Juliet, ballets I'm talking about, and they still work, because the story is so beautiful, and that music is so gorgeous. So, you know, you've got to have a ballet.
Is the same music always used? There's nobody who's...
Most of them use the Prokofiev, which is very famous and so lovely.
Can you tell me what the Theatre of Silence was? That was at the Space Theatre. Space Theatre was small in the Theatre of Silence.
No. I decided as a up-and-coming and upstart choreographer that you could tell a story without words. So I got a few of my friend dancers who were willing to suffer my enthusiasm, and we made two kind of stories, but we didn't talk ever. We used a sort of mime stroke dance movement. And dear Brian didn't mind at all. And he said, yes, you can come, and we put it on in the 10 o'clock slot, you know, when nobody came. It was so late. But these two...
Brian Asbury?
Yes, two short sort of works. And he didn't charge us or anything, we just did it. And
it was experimental?
It was very experimental.
You became the resident choreographer at KPAB. Is that hugely demanding? I mean, do you have to produce a work?
David Poole, who had great faith in me, but was also a huge critic, and Peter Cazalet was also a huge critic. You know, I wasn't allowed to get away with anything. It's to a certain extent, it was quite hard work, but I enjoyed it so much, you know, choreographing ballets on dancers that I'd worked with a lot. And we sort of had a wonderful, what would you call it, you know, osmosis. The dancers and I, you know, the Phyllis Spires.
Symbiosis.
That's right. Edward and Keith McIntosh and Olga Twill and Keith Madewell and all those kind of dancers from way back. And David used to make me do almost 1 3-actor a year and maybe 1 or 2 1-actors a year. I didn't mind. I loved it. That's all I wanted to do. Yes, very much. But we were so fortunate. We had the money, we had an orchestra, we had the theatre, we had all that kind of thing, you know, the wardrobe. So we had a lot of all that stuff, which now costs an absolute fortune. So I was so lucky, I really was, to grow up at that time and to have that opportunity to write all those ballets and use all the facilities that we had.
Well, now if you go to ballet, well, in Johannesburg anyway, the dancers dance to recorded music.
Well, most of the time up there, yes, but we had orchestra.
But I want to ask you, what is it like working with a live orchestra, for them keeping up with the dancers keeping up with the orchestra?
Well, then if you have your conductor in the pit who knows about dance, David Tidbald, much as he didn't like dance, conducting too much for dance, he was a very good dance conductor. And then we used to could afford in those days to bring out specialist conductors who only conducted ballet in England. Terry Kern was one of them. And he came out a lot. And he was wonderful because he could follow a dancer, you know, beautifully. So in that sense, you know...
So the dancer doesn't follow the music follows the dancer?
Not always. We were strictly told as dancers under David Poole that we were not allowed to speak to the conductor ever, and if it was too fast or too slow, he would, no one else. Because you can imagine, everybody would sort of fight to tell, too slow, too fast. And then, but these days, some conductors, if you say, oh, I need it slower, they don't know, and they go too slow, and then it's impossible. So it's a delicate balance. And you have to have worked with each other a lot.